إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره نعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فهو المهتدي ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله خير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم شر الأمور محدثاتها كل محدثة بدعة كل بدعة ضلالة كل ضلالة في النار. Tonight, inshallah, we continue with محرمات من النساء, that the women that a man is forbidden to marry in Islam. And last time, before I finished, I was talking about the rida', and a lot of people ask about the rida'. And as you know, a woman who breastfed you while you were before 2 years old becomes your mother through breastfeeding and suckling, and you cannot marry her. And we talked about that, and always the question is, who are the people I'm not allowed to marry? Who are the people that become related to me? Who are the people that I can, if a woman, I can show my hair in front of because of breastfeeding? And always confusion and guessing and all that. We just make it clear. And that is, even though it's not that the subject we're talking about, and we will come to that section, but just to talk about who become and who's not, who's affected by suckling and who's not. As I said, there are three parties involved in breastfeeding. Three people. There is murdi', the woman who's giving the milk. And there is radi', the baby who gonna suckle. And there is sahib al-laban, and that is the husband of the woman who's giving, the mother. The husband of the breastfeeding woman, the woman who's breastfeeding, and the baby who's getting breastfed. طيب? Those are three. Each human being, each individual, most people, some people don't, but most people will have three types of relatives. There's usul, the fathers, the mothers, as far as high as they can go. The father and the grandfather and the great-grandfather, the mother and the grandmother and the great-grandmother. Those called usul. Asl means origin, the people you come from, the people who brought you into this world. Your parents made it and they got you. Their parents made it, they got them. As a result, you came. So those called the origin. And there is furu'. Furu' means branches. Automatically you understand, are the ones that come out of you. Your kids, your grandkids, their great-grandkids, as far down as you can go. Those called furu'. And then there is the third type of relatives, which called hawashi. Hawashi, your brothers, your sisters, your aunts, your uncles. Those cannot be your origin, and they cannot be your furu', your branches. They're not your offspring, and they're not your parents. Everything else called hawashi. Got it? So we are clear so far? So the boy or the woman who breastfed who gave her milk has usul, furu' and hawashi. The husband, her husband, has usul, furu' and hawashi. The kid who got breastfed, now we're talking about him growing up. So most probably he has, for sure he has usul, he has hawashi, and let's say he has furu'. Let's say he got married and he has kids. Alright? Now, who's affected because of the breastfeeding? The usul and the hawashi of the kid, of al-radi' are not affected. Only his furu', only his kids are affected by breastfeeding. And I will give an example. For the mother or the woman who gave the milk, who breastfed, her usul and her furu' and her hawashi are affected. For the husband of the woman who breastfed, his usul and his furu' and his hawashi are affected. So you can see the woman and her husband, everyone is affected. The suckling kid, only his offspring affected. طيب. Let's see how much you understood of what I said. Ahmed was breastfed by a woman named Fatima. And Fatima's husband named Abdul Rahman. So who's the breastfed? Who got breastfed? Ahmed. Who did the breastfeeding? Fatima. And who's her husband? Abdul Rahman. Now we said for the woman who gives the milk, everyone is affected. So that means her kids are brothers and sisters for Ahmed, right? Can Ahmed's father marry one of Fatima's kids? They're his son's brother and sisters. That means they're his brother and sisters. That means they are his kids, his daughters and boys? No. Because only affected his furu', his kids. So his father, Ahmed's father, and Ahmed's brother from the original mother, blood mother, can marry anyone on Fatima's side or Abdul Rahman's side. طيب Ahmed's uncle, can he marry Fatima? Can he marry Fatima's daughter? Right. Can he marry Abdul Rahman's daughter? No, maybe from some other marriage. Can he? Yes. طيب. Ahmed got married. He has kids. One of his kids met one of Fatima's daughters and wants to marry her. Can he do that? Why? What's the relationship?
He's a father to Ahmed. That's his aunt.
She's his aunt. Because remember, Fatima's kids are all brothers and sisters for Ahmed. So Ahmed's son will call his father's sisters aunt. So he cannot marry his aunt. Can he marry Fatima, Ahmed's son? Why?
His mother.
His grandmother. She is his grandmother. Got it? Can he marry Abdul Rahman's brother or sister? Can he?
No.
Why?
That's his aunt.
Is she?
Well, I just think it's the wife is called Fatima. There's another.
No, sister. What's Fatima has to do with this? Abdul Rahman's sister. Can Ahmed's son marry her?
No.
What is the relationship between Ahmed's son and Abdul Rahman's sister?
That's his aunt. Sister of his grandfather. They can't marry.
Sister of what? What is that called? She is his great aunt. Because his aunt is Abdul Rahman's daughter. So Abdul Rahman's daughter's aunt will be great aunt for her. Alright? So you guys understand, it's very simple. So now when you're asked, just think about it. The kid who get breastfed, only his kids are affected. The mother who breastfeed and the father of the husband of the woman who breastfeed, all of their relatives are affected. So all their relatives become relative to Ahmed, and from there you can go. But when it comes to marriage, only Ahmed's sons, kids, daughters and sons and their great daughters and their grandkids and all that are affected. So the relationship, if there is relationship, it's only between Ahmed and his kids, his offspring, and everyone on the woman and her husband side. Clear? So when I ask you next week, you guys will be comfortable answering, inshallah. Huh? Fine. Alright. So tonight, inshallah, we will continue with what we started last time. And we talked about al-muharramat min al-nisa, the women that are not, you're not permitted as a Muslim man to marry in Islam and under Allah's laws. قال الله تعالى ولا تنكحوا ما نكح آباؤكم من النساء إلا ما قد سلف إنه كان فاحشة ومقتا وساء سبيلا حرمت عليكم أمهاتكم وبناتكم وأخواتكم وعماتكم وخالاتكم وبنات الأخ وبنات الأخت وأمهاتكم اللاتي أرضعنكم وأخواتكم من الرضاعة وأمهات نسائكم وربائبكم اللاتي في حجوركم من نسائكم اللاتي دخلتم بهن فإن لم تكونوا دخلتم بهن فلا جناح عليكم وحلائل أبنائكم الذين من أصلابكم وأن تجمعوا بين الأختين إلا ما قد سلف إن الله كان غفورا رحيما. We said this ayah in Surah An-Nisa is really the guide to who you cannot marry, and it's very clear. And last time we spoke about the different types of people that the women you cannot marry, and we categorized them. We said there are some women you cannot marry, period. Never. You will never be able to marry. And some women you cannot marry, only temporary. And some situations do not allow you to marry anyone. When is it that a Muslim man is not, all the Muslim women become haram for him to marry? He's married to 4. Okay, so there are situations that we talked about those. There are situations that only temporary. There are specific women you cannot marry, only temporary, and then when the reason disappears or becomes invalid, then you can. And that example of that? Sister, your wife's sister. You cannot marry her as long as you're married to her sister. But if her sister, your wife, you divorce her, or she dies, or whatever, now you become allowed to marry. And there are reasons, a woman that you can marry, but you do something that you're not allowed to marry her anymore. Never you're allowed to marry her. And we said example of that. If you marry a daughter, you can never marry her mother. Even if you just do the contract. If you do the aqd, nikah on a girl, and then you do not consummate the marriage, and then you leave her, you divorce her, only the contract, you can never go and marry her mother. And the same thing applies if you do the same thing with the mother. Is that true?
No.
No. If you marry the mother, you do a contract with a mother who's already married before and she has kids and she has daughters, and then you never consummate the marriage, and then you leave her. Can you come back and marry her daughter?
Yes.
Yes. Alright? So all these things that we had spoken about, and in some details. So inshallah, tonight Shaykh al-Islam rahimahullah ibn Qudama will continue talking about the ahkam in this issues. قال المصنف رحمه الله ويحرم الجمع بين الأختين وبين المرأة وعمتها وخالتها لقول رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يجمع بين المرأة وعمتها ولا بينها وبين خالتها ولا يجوز للحر أن يجمع بين 4 نسوة ولا للعبد أن يجمع إلا 2 فإن جمع بين من لا يجوز الجمع بينه في عقد واحد فسد وإن كان في عقدين لم يصح الثاني منهما ولو أسلم كافر وتحته أختان اختار منهما واحدة وإن كانتا أما وبنتا ولم يدخل بالأم فسد نكاحها وحدها وإن قد دخل بها فسد نكاحهما وحرمتا على التأبيد وإن أسلم وتحته أكثر من 4 أمسك منهن 4 وفارق سائرهن سواء إن كان من أمسك منهن أول من عقد عليها أو آخرهن وكذلك إذا أسلم العبد وتحته أكثر من 2 ومن طلق امرأة فنكح أختها أو خالتها أو عمتها أو خامسة في عدتها لم يصح سواء كان الطلاق رجعيا أو بائنا. I mean it's straightforward. What's happening? Can you go early? لسه؟ طيب شو هذي؟ It's clear. Alright, let's just translate. Here he already started telling you who you cannot marry. Right? Now he tells you what happens if this takes place. Huh? Because you were ignorant, you didn't know, you weren't Muslim, whatever the situation is. Now he wants to tell you what the ahkam and what the regulations and the rulings are. Okay. Here he said, وَيَحْرُمُ الْجَمْعِ بَيْنَ الْأُخْتَيْنِ وَبَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَعَمَّتِهِ وَخَالِتِهِ. We already talked about that you're not allowed to marry 2 sisters at the same time. And you're not allowed to marry a woman and her aunt at the same time, whether her father's sister or her mother's sister. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is clear that no one marries or have in marriage at the same time a woman and her aunt, maternal or paternal. So that is in one hadith, in one narration, when the Prophet ﷺ said that hadith, that you don't marry a woman and her aunt or paternal or maternal, the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith, the narration said, إِن تَفْعَلُوا فَإِنَّهُ قَطِيعَةُ رَحْمٍ. And if you would do that, you will be severing the relationship, the kinship between this woman, and naturally women are jealous. So perhaps if you're married to a woman and then you decide to marry her aunt, that will make her create animosity between this girl and her aunt, and she might not talk to her again. So Islam came to eliminate that and the chance for that. So that is the hikmah of why this is haram. قول المؤلف, someone might say, can a man marry a woman and her cousin? The same thing, we're going to sever the kinship. We say if that can happen, but remember that the kinship and the relationship between a woman and her aunt is way stronger than a relationship between a woman and her cousin. The obligation of a person toward his aunt is different than his obligation toward his cousin. That's one thing. And because it's clear that the aunt is like a mother, at the level of the mother. Okay? Just like the uncle at the level of the father, as the Prophet ﷺ said. So it's very important to understand that. And second, if we're going to go with the cousin, the Shara' went cousin 2, and then great cousin, and then this and that, you will make it so tight for the man to find another woman to marry. And imagine you live in an area where it's tribes and all that, and everyone is related to everyone else. So that is, you cannot extend it. So it's clear we stick to that aunt as the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ said. قول المؤلف رحمه الله ولا يجوز للحر أن يجمع بين أكثر من 4 نسوة. قل الله سبحانه وتعالى فانكحوا ما طاب لكم من النساء مثنى وثلاث ورباع. Here he is saying رحمه الله that it's not allowed for a Muslim who's free. And we already told that when slavery existed, they were slaves and they were free Muslims. So here the free Muslim who's not owned by someone is not allowed to marry more than 4 women. And we all know that. And perhaps that is the ijma' of the ummah, even though some mubtadi'ah and some innovators and some people who went astray said something else. But the ijma' of the ummah and the consensus of the ulama of this ummah that a Muslim man is not allowed to marry more than 4. And it's clear in the ayah in Surah An-Nisa, فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُمْ مَثْنَى مِنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. And also the Prophet ﷺ, when one of the Sahaba became Muslim, he had more than 4 wives. So the Prophet ﷺ told him, you keep 4 and you let the rest go. You keep 4. And this hadith is very important, as we will come in a little bit. Like, is having more than 1 wife mustahab or jaiz? Okay? Is it permissible to have more than 1 wife, or is it recommended? Okay? Is it permissible? Yani you have the choice. And obviously the ayah is clear. فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُمْ. Okay? مَا طَابَ لَكُمْ, yani whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever you feel good. And here, this, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayah gives you the option. So it's not really an order. Okay? It's not mandation. It's not mandatory. And we said if it's an order, it means mandatory. And then when you see a lot of the Sahaba did not marry 4, you understand that then it's not wajib, it's mustahab. But is it mustahab? Yani recommended? It's the sunnah, because you hear a lot of people, brother, get married more and more. And it's the sunnah. Or is it jaiz? Okay? The ulama have 2 different opinions about that. Obviously, that some of the ulama, or one group, said it's jaiz. And it's just permissible. Okay? Yani if you do it, the hukum of permissible, yani whether you do it or you don't do it, there is no reward unless the intention is specific. يعني mubah or jaiz, like eating. Eating is mubah. Sleeping is jaiz, permissible. But if you do it with the right intention, you can be rewarded for it. But if you just do it without any intention, then just nothing, it's not for you or against you. So that is the meaning yani, when they say jaiz, because the ahkam are 5 different levels. You have wajib, which is mandatory. If you do it, you're rewarded. If you don't do it, you will be held accountable. Then you have a mustahab, or sunnah, and that is, if you do it, you get rewarded. If you don't do it, you're not blamed. Then you have mandub or mubah, and if you do mubah, or you don't do it, the same thing, unless there's intention. And then after that you have the makruh, which is disliked. If you do it, nothing against you. If you don't do it, then you will be rewarded, because you left something that is disliked. And then you have al-haram. If you do it, obviously, you're sinful. If you don't do it, you are rewarded. Are you rewarded if you leave the haram?
Yes, you do with the right intention.
The right intention?
Yes.
Do you have choice?
No.
The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, وَفِي بِضْعِ أَحَدِكُمْ صَدَقَ. يعني the one of you, when he does the Sahaba, thinks that you do that, you have intercourse with your wife, it's sadaqah. And you know the rest of the hadith. That if he did in haram, he would have. So when you avoid falling in the haram, and you resist yourself, and you control yourself, and you stay away from it, you will be rewarded for it. Inshallah. So the point is, jaiz, that is one of the opinions of the ulama, that ta'addud, or having more than one wife, they said it's permissible. It's not recommended, it's only permissible. I want to tell you that sometimes it's haram, and sometimes it's permissible, sometimes it's recommended. But we have to look at the situation. Yani, if you're going to not fulfill the conditions of ta'addud, then you are committing haram. Alright? If you're not fulfilling the conditions, and we will talk about that. But the point is that the opinion, one opinion said it's permissible, jaiz. What their adillah? قالوا قال الله تعالى فانكحوا ما طاب لكم. So Allah here said, you marry whatever you like. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. So here they said, since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the option Whatever you like, that indicates that it's jaiz, it's permissible, but it's not wajib, it's not recommended. That's their first dalil. They also, their second dalil, فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدًا. In the ayah, in Nisa, later on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and if you are afraid that you will not be just, then you stick to one. So they said that's another dalil, in the sense that it's very difficult to be just and fair. Their third dalil, they said that the Prophet ﷺ said, من كانت له زوجتان فمال إلى أحدهما جاء إلى إحداهما جاء يوم القيامة وشقه مائل. Who marries two women, the Prophet ﷺ said, and then he's more inclined to one, يعني he discriminates against one for the benefit of one. Not he loves one more than the other, because that he has no control over. Not because he's more, more in love with one, or because we know the Prophet ﷺ loved Aisha more than all of them. Okay? So that is something he has no control over, his feelings. Not because he enjoys one more than another. That is, he cannot control that. So with the things he can control, and he's required to be just. The Prophet said, who marries two women, and then he's more inclined toward one over the other. It's harmful to the other, then he will come on the Day of Judgment and one of his sides is bent. Okay, and he's not walking straight. And that is because of that injustice that he had committed. So it's a warning from the Prophet ﷺ. So they say, if the Prophet ﷺ telling you, if you're gonna marry more than one and be unjust, and that's how you're gonna look on the Day of Judgment, then it's better to stay away from it. Alright? So these are their the opinion that said it's permissible, and that is the opinion of the majority of the Jumhur. Jumhur al-Fuqaha, the majority of the Fuqaha, that's their opinion. But when you come to the ulama al-hadith, muhaddithin, their opinion that it's recommended. Their opinion, it's recommended. That is the opinion of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and the most of the ulama al-hadith. They said it's recommended because the Prophet said, as in hadith Ibn Abbas in Bukhari, تزوجوا فإن خير هذه الأمة أكثرها نساء. The Prophet said, marry, and to the men, the best of this ummah are those who have the most wives. We know there's a limit. Okay? But again, you don't say that's it. If someone married more than one, he's the best. Because there are conditions need to be met. And because you see the other hadith, if he's married, this person who's going to come with velvet side on the Day of Judgment, he's married more than one. And he's from amongst those who have most wives. But still he's in a bad situation and condition on the Day of Judgment. And they said the Prophet married more than one, and Abu Bakr did the same thing, and Umar did the same thing. So all these are proofs for them. Okay. So in general, we don't take this issue just like that, jaiz or recommended, or sunnah or mustahab, because it's very important that the conditions for polygamy must be met. If you're a man and want to marry a second wife, or take a second wife or a third wife, you have to have the conditions ready. You have to be able to fulfill the conditions for polygamy, for being able to handle more than one woman. And the conditions for that, first condition, you have to be capable physically and financially. Okay? Some people, he's the man, he wants to marry another woman, and once he marries her, he takes her, and he drops her off in front of the welfare office. Be a man, as they say, man up. You cannot afford, don't marry. And physically, He cannot give the woman her rights, even in bed, and he wants to go, the man wants to marry another woman. These are her rights. It's not the question that we always hear, can I take a second wife without my first wife knowing? And you're so mad that you can't marry us, you want to take a second wife, and you're so scared to tell your first wife? If you're that tough, then why are you scared? And as I always say, I don't understand how you're going to be just with both of them if you're hiding your second marriage. How? And your life will be full of lyings and deception and all. How? So if you think you're man enough and you want to marry a second wife, then just go and confront your first wife. That's the bottom line. I'm not saying go and marry a second wife. I'm saying that be man enough to confront her. And then it's her choice. But it's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given. It's one of your rights. One of your rights. And she as a Muslim, she needs to, she might not expect it to understand, but she needs to submit. It's what Allah said and what the Prophet said. Okay? So it's very important, this is a condition, so to be able to be physically and financially capable, and also to be able to control yourself from being unjust. Be able to control yourself from being unjust. So don't your wife, you've been with her for 30 years and now you're going to go and marry someone who's half of your age. And of course, you want to stay with her, you want to hang out with her, and that will lead to the other woman, فَتَذَرُوهَا كَالْمُعَلَّقَةِ. You leave her hanging. She doesn't know, she married or divorced. Does she have a husband or she doesn't? And every month she will hear from him. So it's very important. If you think you cannot do that, you cannot be just, then you're not allowed to marry. You see? So those are conditions that those who want need to understand those conditions and what they entail before they rush for that decision. And it's a very serious decision. It can destroy houses and homes and lives, marriages. So it's very important we understand that. والعدل بين النساء المأكل والمسكن والملبس. To be just has to do with the housing, the clothing, the feeding. Other than that, love and this and that, you can't control that. Unless you're enjoying this and you're not, there's no gauger, all right? But with things, the physical things you can, then that is what's required, as well as mabit. Now, someone will say, if I buy for this pound of fish, snappers, I have to buy the snappers? No, maybe this doesn't like snappers. All right? When we talk about feeding, this one likes something, you don't have to buy the other one if she doesn't like it. All right? And also maybe, to be fair, to show them you're taking care of both of them. If you don't buy this one piece of garment for $5 and the other one you go buy her for $500, that is just. But you don't have to have $5.99 and $5.99. All right? You try your best to be just and fair. And al-mabit, you sleep with this one. You stay with her 2 nights, you stay with that 2 nights. 3 nights, 3 nights. Unless one of them waives or forfeits her rights. So if a man marries a woman, second one, and he tells her, listen, my first wife, the only reason she will approve, now you don't need the approval of the first wife, that if the only reason she'll be okay with this, if I sleep in her house 7 nights a day, 7 nights a week. The second wife says, it's her right? 3.5 nights, it's her right. She says, no problem. So they get married, a month passes, the guy spends some time during the day with the second wife, then at night he goes to sleep in the other one's, the first wife's house. After a month, the second wife tells him, you know what? I can't take this anymore. Does he become obligated to start sleeping in her house or not?
Yes.
But she forfeited her right before the marriage, didn't she? And she said, no problem. She can change her mind.
Yeah, she has a right. She fulfilled the right, but when she fulfilled the right, it doesn't become an obligation on her. It's her right that she gives.
She gave up her rights, but the right of the Sharia is still standing. The obligations of the Sharia is still standing. So even if she gave up her rights, she's still entitled to take back. Most probably that will happen the first or the second night. Huh? One last one, please.
Very important. So these are the conditions for ta'addud. You can't afford them, you can't take care of them, and you cannot be just, then you should not get married. Alright. يقول المؤلف رحمه الله ولا للعبد أن يجمع إلا اثنتين. So we said the free man, free Muslim cannot have more than 4 at the same time. The slave cannot have more than 2. The slave man cannot have more than 2. Because that's how it works. In the ahkam, the hukum on the slave is half of the hukum of the free man. As long as it, but it's not fair. Well, first of all, he's slave. Second of all, if he would have married for, most probably that's going to keep him busy from fulfilling his master's rights. Third, if the free man, if he commits zina, gets slashed 100 times, the slave man gets lashed 200. Alright? So as well as some might seem unjust here, but it's balanced here. And it's all the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's the dalil on that? Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu سأل الصحابة. He asked the companions في العبد هل له أن يتزوج أكثر من 2. Umar asked the Sahaba, can a slave person marry more than 2? So Abdul Rahman bin Auf رضي الله عنه said لا يتزوج إلى 2 على النصف من حق الحر. He cannot marry more than 2, half of the rights of the free. And the Sahaba were listening and they did not object. So it's taken as the agreement among the Sahaba. Alright? Okay. يقول المؤلف فإن جمع بين من لا يجوز الجمع بينهم في عقد واحد. Now, what if he does? What if a person, here he's saying Ibn Qudama, so if a person marries more than 1, that is not supposed to be married to them at the same time. But here the key في عقد واحد. إيش يعني? In one contract. What does that mean? Same time. يعني he married a woman and her aunt at the same time. Or a few minutes later. Or an hour later. Or 2 days later. Okay? And now 2 days it becomes 2 separate contracts. But if it happens simultaneously, very close time, period of time. And he married this one, and he's sitting there and he sees the other one's father, and he tells him, marry this, and he married. Okay? So he's saying, if this takes place, okay, he said, فَسَدَ الْعَقْدِ. The contract becomes invalid. يعني if you marry at the same time a woman and her aunt, the whole marriage, both marriages are invalid. Both marriages are invalid. لأن الزوجة الأولى ليست بأولى من الثانية، والثانية ليست بأولى من الأولى، والعمة ليست بأولى من البنت، والبنت ليست بأولى من العمة, and on. Because no one is better than the other. So if you marry a woman and her aunt at the same time, the aunt is not better than the niece, and the niece is not better than the aunt, and the first one is not better. So they're all the same. So the whole contract is invalid
is invalid. So you're not married to anyone. Everything fasid. That because it took place at the same time. فتعارضا فتساقطا. المؤلف وإن كان في عقدين لم يصح الثاني منهما. Now what if he marries two women that he's not supposed to be married to at the same time, but with two different contracts? يعني I marry, not me, someone marries Fatima, and then a month later he marries Fatima's aunt. Obviously you cannot marry a woman and her aunt at the same time. So in this situation you have two different contracts. Okay? So he's saying rahimahullah, وَإِن كَانَ فِي عَقْدَيْنِ لَمْ يَصِحِّ الثَّانِي مِنْهُمَا. Which one becomes invalid? Obviously the second contract. Why? No.
The first one is it's invalid.
لا.
It's not. The second one was after the first one. The first one was in one day. The other one was.
طيب why the second one for?
The first one is ahaq
Why?
because she was first. That contract is valid.
صحيح. Because the first contract is صحيح. Sound contract. There is no problem with it. It's perfect شرعي contract. The second, because it was introduced into the first, is the second that is invalid. That's why the second doesn't count. There is no problem with the first contract. It met the conditions and everything. Obvious? Okay? Clear? Alright. قل مؤلف. So if you marry a woman and then a month later you marry her aunt, actually you never married her aunt. Okay? You were never married to the aunt, because the contract is invalid in the first place. Alright. قل مؤلف.
Why the second marriage is invalid? What's the reason?
Because the first marriage indicates that it's haram to marry a woman's aunt.
Oh, because of
It's clear. The rule, yes. Not the relationship, but the aunt, amma or khala, in the hadith are haram to marry them at the same time to a niece. So if I'm married to an aunt, the first one, and then a month later I want to marry her niece, which one is invalid? The niece.
well, forget the month. Let's say 6 months.
The period doesn't matter, just we're saying two different contracts. Yeah. So the first one, so if there are two contracts, the first one stands because there was no violation of the law when you establish the first contract. But when you try to do the second contract, we said once you marry a woman, it becomes haram to marry her aunt.
Yeah, that's the main reason.
That's the reason. That's what makes the second contract invalid.
Not the time.
No, the timing has nothing to do with it.
Because at first,
I'm just giving example to separate between the contracts. The first example was at the same time it took place.
it doesn't matter if the aunt or not aunt. The second example he gives with an
Yeah.
aunt. So,
No. Well, he
The
said-
first example, the same time.
He said that
When we say contract, doesn't mean papers.
with two different women, there's no relationship between them. The first example.
No, that's fine. There was the relationship that forbid a man to have them at the same time, married to them at the same time.
No,
If you marry two women at the same time who are not related to each other, it's okay.
okay.
Yes, but if you marry a woman and her aunt at the same time, it's not okay. Because they're haram to be married to both of them at the same time.
So you said the time is no problem.
the difference is the
It's
first
the
time.
relationship because she's her aunt.
That it's
The difference
the time is not a problem when there are two contracts that separate by any period of time. So if there's one that is old contract and then now there's a new contract, whether it's 1 day older, 2 days older, 2 months, 6 months, 6 years, 10 years, that's what two contracts. But the first situation took place in the same gathering, at the same time, few minutes separate. You understand?
Yeah, but the rule here, the general rule is you cannot marry
You cannot have a woman and her aunt
and her
under
aunt,
you.
Period.
Period. Any
No
period.
matter about
But the difference here is the first situation you're not married to both. both both marriages are invalid. Because which one are we going to put first? They took its place at the same time.
Why I was saying that because if the one who's giving them doing the contract for them, he should know that both marriages.
Of course, if there is, but if that is required, it's not required for someone, shaykh or imam, to do the contract. If the wali is present and there are people, witnesses, and they agreed on the matter, that's it, it's marriage. If the father says, I give you my daughter in marriage, and you say, I accept, and then some other woman's father said, I give you my daughter in marriage, who's aunt of that woman, and you say accept, that took place at the same time. So both are invalid. Alright? Okay. يقول المؤلف ولو أسلم كافر وتحته أختان اختار منهما واحدة. If a kafir, someone who is not Muslim and becomes Muslim, but he was married to two women and they were sisters, he was married to two sisters and now he becomes Muslim, haram for him to continue with those two sisters, then he chooses one of them. That is, as long as those women are from the people of the book. Because if they were Wathaniyin or atheists or that, he's not allowed to be with any of them. Clear? Alright. طيب. يقول المؤلف وإن كانتا أما وبنتا نظر فإن كان لم يدخل بالأم فإن الأم حينئذ يفسد نكاحها. Okay? يعني he marries a woman and her mother. يعني he's a player. He marries a woman and her mother. He does the contract and he sleeps with the daughter. He consummates the marriage with the daughter, but he does not consummate it with the mother yet. He said, فَإِنَّ الْأُمْ حِينَئِذٍ يَفْسُدُ نِكَاحُهَا. The mother's marriage is invalid, falls. So if he consummates with the girl first, with the daughter, then the mother's contract the marriage becomes invalid. وإن كان قد دخل بها فسد نكاحهما وحرمتا على التأبيد. But if he consummates the marriage with the mother and her daughter, then both marriages are invalid and they become forbidden for him to marry forever. He can never marry any one of them. You cannot. Okay? Now, going back to the original issue we talked about. If you do a contract with a daughter and you break that contract before you consummate the marriage, you cannot marry the woman, the mother. And that's what happened. If you do contract with the mother and you break without consummation, you can go and marry the daughter. Alright? And that is what these ahkam are based on. يقول المؤلف وإن أسلم وتحته أكثر من 4 أمسك منهن 4 وفارق سائرهن. Okay? The Prophet ﷺ told Ghaylan ibn Salama when he became Muslim and he was married to more than 4. The Prophet ﷺ told him, you keep 4 and let the rest free. From this hadith you learn that if you were married to more than 4, you have to divorce all of them except 4. Okay? Second, you don't have to keep the oldest or the youngest, the newest or the oldest, the most recent contract or not. You have the choice. You want to keep the first one, the last one, and the one in the middle, and the second one? Your choice. So you don't have to keep the first 4 or the middle 4 or the last 4. Okay? That's why the Prophet ﷺ left it like that. Keep 4 and let the rest go free. Now, clear? طيب. قول المؤلف سواء كان من أمسك منهن أول من عقد عليهن أو آخرهن. As I said, it doesn't matter which ones he needs to keep, as long as he's keeping only 4. قول المؤلف وكذلك إذا أسلم العبد وتحته أكثر من 2. Also the slave person, we said 2. But if he becomes Muslim, and he's married to more than 2, he has to keep 2 and leave the rest. يقول المؤلف: ومن طلق امرأة فنكح أختها أو خالتها أو خامسة في عدتها لم يصح سواء كان الطلاق رجعيا أم بائنا. Now this issue is actually it's like a puzzle. This حيثية is a puzzle, because we all understand that only women have عدة. But which is the only time that a man can have عدة? What عدة means? When the woman is in her عدة, what does that mean? She cannot marry. She cannot get married until the عدة is over. We know the man can marry any time, but there is a period of time or a situation where the man has عدة and he cannot marry during that time. When is that?
3 days after his lifetime.
Huh?
3 days after his lifetime.
لا.
If he divorced the fourth one, number 4, until her period is over.
Okay. Exactly. If you have 4 wives and you divorce 1, how many you're married to right now? 4. As long as the 4th one in her iddah, as long as she's in her iddah, you cannot marry another one, because she's considered to be your wife still until the iddah is over. Whether it's بينونة صغرى or كبرى. يعني what that means, whether it's the first divorce, because with the first divorce and the second divorce, while the woman's still in her iddah, you can take her back. But with the third divorce, she has iddah, but you cannot take her back, but yet still considered like your wife. So if you divorce your wife, whether first time or second time, the 4th wife, first time or second time or third time, you cannot go and marry a 5th one. You cannot go marry her sister, you cannot marry her aunt, whoever, anyone, because now you will be married to 5. So that is when a man has iddah. Okay? Very clear. So if you have 4 and you divorce 1, and you want to keep it 4, then you have to wait for this 4th one or 4th woman that you just divorced. You have to wait for her iddah to be over, and then you can go ahead and marry her sister or her aunt or whoever. Alright?
The first divorce, the second one, there is a chance.
Yeah.
Third divorce, there is no
Allah.
chance for her to go back.
But there is iddah.
But he's
Iddah
done
for her.
Huh?
Iddah for him or her?
for her.
For both. Oh, iddah for her if she's only one, first wife or second or
Well,
third.
that's it.
But
Yeah,
if
but
it's,
what's the chance? There's no chance for her to go back then.
there is no chance unless she marries another man and he sleeps with her and then it doesn't work out and he divorces her. If you divorce a woman 3 times, you cannot marry her again unless she get married and it doesn't work out. Not she gets married just to get out, to get back with you. That's haram. Huh? Alright? That's not what we're talking about. If once you divorce a woman 3 times, that's it. But she has a iddah as clearing for her wombs. But the issue is you cannot marry her. That's why the first iddah and the first divorce and second divorce, she stays in your house. And you can be alone with her. But the third divorce, you cannot be alone with her. Actually, she doesn't even stay in your house. Alright? Or she stays in her house. Maybe you were living in her house.
That's the point he's trying to make.
At that time, he's free to live.
لا. The ulama, that's why they said whether الرجع بينونة صغرى or كبرى. Okay? So that is the bottom line. Because if you think about it, يعني, it's a good thinking. But someone divorced a woman 3rd time, and then it became clear to him that one of the divorces did not count. he assumed that it was a valid divorce, and then when he asked Ahl al-Ilm, they told him it's not a divorce. He made an expression and he thought it means divorce, so he counted it as divorce, but it's not. You understand? So there are many situations that can come into play and make it the baynuna sughra, al-kubra sughra. That is an example. But the bottom line is, as long as the woman is in her iddah, she's still considered a wife. Even though the rights are different in first and second to the third of divorces or third iddah, but that is where the ulama, they said, you cannot marry a fifth because you're still married, and once her iddah is over, then that is when you become allowed to marry. Now Abu al-Abbas, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, they go with a different opinion. They said once she passes her first haida, the third, when she's divorced third time, once she passes her first haida, her first period, then you can get married as well. But Allahu a'lam, is you wait until the whole iddah is over for you to be able to marry a fourth or another fourth woman. Right? And a lot of times people divorced and they come to ask, I divorced my wife and it was the third time, and what should I do? Faqih, and someone with knowledge will ask. We'll ask about the situations. What happened? How did you divorce her? And usually, there are some outlets. Some people, they divorce so many times that there is no outlet for them. Just like Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu used to find excuses for people. But he used to say that sometimes they overuse all their excuses and they want me to find an excuse, I can't. Alright? But with the divorce, inshallah, we're not inviting that go ahead and stop divorcing right and left. But alhamdulillah, there are a few outlets that Shara', inshallah, can permit, and a lot of differences amongst the ulama. But sometimes you have to find an outlet to save a marriage and a family. But some people might overuse these things and run out of any options. So we stay, امسك عليك لسانك, and control yourself. And some people, he's upset and he divorced, and then he says, I was upset. لا طلاق في إغلاق. إغلاق, you don't even comprehend what you're saying. The Prophet ﷺ said, لا طلاق ولا اعتاق في إغلاق. إغلاق مغلقة معك, سكرة. You do not even comprehend what you're saying. So if someone in that furious and in that situation, mental situation, and he divorces his wife, and when he's asked, did you divorce him? He said, I don't even remember. I said, no, that is what does not count. But just angry because there are little spices on the food and little salt, and you know exactly what you're doing, that is not to be used as I was angry. So it's very important. We need to be, as I think I mentioned this before, even it happened here outside the masjid when someone called me from somewhere north, and a father, and about his daughter getting divorced with her husband. So I said, how many times he divorced her? He said, too many times. Okay? So when they tell you, too many times, as many excuses you can find out. How many excuses can I find out, So I said, and then I talked to the husband, and I asked him, and clearly there were at least 3 divorces that counted. There's no outlet whatsoever. Plus the other 100 divorces, those are bonus extra. Then when I talked back to the father, and they told him, your daughter is divorced. I don't see any outlet for her. He said, Mashiach ya Sheikh. He said, let it go this time. I said, Subhanallah, I let it go. Who am I to let it go? This is Allah's law. Mashiach. Let it go. Let it slide this time. You know, some people mentality, يعني it's ajib, huh? Strange. So inshallah, يعني, control ourselves so we do not, because it's regret. Divorce is regret, especially when there are kids involved. When there are kids involved, يعني, sometimes divorce is a solution, huh? Is a solution, but it's not something like people use as threatening and as every time he gets angry he throw the word divorce. It's not to show your manness. It has nothing to do with that. The manness is to be able to control yourself when you need to control yourself. Okay, but to say something, it's not you deserved it. You did not deserve the right to divorce. It's a privilege that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given you. Because Allah knows that you're the one who can control his emotions more. Huh? And most probably all of us have fights with their wives, and يعني, very much the very first thing she wants, divorce. Right? Divorce, that's it, I don't want to be with you. And then 2 minutes later she cools down. Imagine it was in her hand. She would have divorced you, right there. Alright? So it's a privilege that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in the hands of the man, because he knows that he can control himself. So control yourself and don't يعني, use this word, especially if there's ulfa and there's love and there's يعني, peace and comfort between you and your spouse. Stay away from this word, because trust me, it's regret. Alright? قل قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم صلى الله على سيدنا محمد جزاكم الله خير السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.